So hello and welcome back to the GorillaBiker on this very pretty morning heading out of Clayton to work. It's been a long time since I've done a to work moto vlog? Yeah, we'll call it that. So I said I'd do one this morning. And also because, you know, EICMA is currently still happening right now, or just happened. Either way, I wanted to talk about some of the bikes that kind of I have seen there, and one thing that I've noticed that I think, you know, obviously a lot of us have been talking about a long time, and I don't mean just me, I mean like lots of people on the internet, lots of people who I speak to about bikes in general, is, you know, kind of like value coming back to the motorcycling market. And I think we're starting to see that. I think, like, obviously, you know, I made a video on the Honda Hornet. I was excited about the price point. Now, I know a lot of people were disappointed about some things on the Hornet, but at the end of the day, I think you have to recognize, you know, that the Hornet was aimed at a price more so than, like, you know, a whole raft of tech specs and features, which personally I think is cool. Now, one of the bikes that I'm personally most interested in, which is hilarious since it's not coming to America by the looks of it, is the kind of the follow-on from the CBF. Now, anyone who's been following the channel for a long time knows that I had a CBF 1000 in Ireland, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it's one of my favourite vehicles that I've ever used, owned, whatever way you want to look at it. One of my favourite bikes I've ever ridden. It's a great bike. You know, I did a couple of tours on it, good tours, and it was always just such a good bike, you know, especially with the luggage and everything else. And the new one, I'm not sure the exact entire title, because, you know, everyone likes to make subtitles these days, but it's like something like the CBF 1000 GT or something like that. CBF 1000 GT, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of pluses and minuses in there at some point when they add on specs and features. And that bike, and I'll probably do a video on like, you know, several of these, like, kind of like my old school, going through the techs and tech specs and features that kind of interest me when the full lists are available. Because obviously you know you have your channels that are like actual journalists, which I am not. I'm just someone who has a hobby. And they're already, after releasing their videos, you know, their first looks and all that. I just want to wait till all the tech specs and features are out, and, you know, the full list and confirmed pricing and stuff like that, and then I'll go through it. But I do think, by the looks of it, you know, like Kawasaki have the KLE 500 adventure bike and the SE version of it, which I think honestly looks like an absolutely fantastic bike and a great price for said bike as well. Because I do think, like, you know, and I'm actually currently working on a video on that, on this, you know, people were wondering about, like, the kind of the cost of putting this whole thing together, and I'm doing that. But I think any bike that you can go out and get on, you know, for 5,000 all in, perfect, or 5,000-ish anyway, it's just a very good, like, value proposition right now in this part of the world. Obviously in other parts of the world it would not be. But here, we're you know, relative to the costs, most people can afford that, you know what I mean? Obviously, that's entirely dependent on the people, but I mean, if you look at your median wage, your average wage, I think that's a pretty affordable bike for this area of the world. By the way, I used Mr. Sam's spray wax on the tank, and it looks so much better now. Mr. Sam of Cletus McFarland, I don't know, does anyone else watch Cletus McFarland, but I do, and I think him and his whole team, that's like the dream, you know what I mean? Have a workshop where you just build stuff that you want to build with friends. The CBF, or whatever it's called, I'm calling it the new CBF because that's what it is to me. That Kawasaki KLE, that's a pretty exciting bike. I see a lot of Honda's 500 lineup. And obviously, you know, again, if you're new to the channel, it's the first time watching, we do have a Rebel 500 in the garage, which is a fantastic bike. And I've seen they're starting to add the E-clutch, which they kind of piloted on the CB650 or CBR 650. They're adding that to a lot of the 500 lineup. Now, do I personally want the E-clutch? No, but I am riding a 1997 Honda Valkyrie right now with 0 assist, so I'm not the target market for that, which is fair enough. But I will say, especially after my wife has learned to ride, well, gotten more comfortable to ride, I suppose I should say, on the Rebel. I do think that it has a place, and I do think that, you know, that E-clutch is going to bring a lot more riders into the market, which, and I do think, so, you know, a part of this is nowadays, and I don't want to say younger people, because a lot of people learning are actually my age, but people my age and below, say, who are learning, they're more risk averse while learning to ride bikes. But yeah, I do think that E-clutch, I thought you'd go a bit further past me. No, yeah, look, all the buffeting. I'm not in a rush this morning though, I just want to enjoy my cruise to work, because this thing is finally running beautifully. But yeah, the E-clutch. So like, I think for a lot of, you know, learner riders, a lot more learner riders now are risk averse. Whereas, you know, obviously when I learned to ride, I was not risk averse, and I did silly things, you know. Me and Lucky Luke Rides had a couple of very fun spins back in the days, even in Cork when I was much less experienced. Whereas, you know, now I think I'm kind of comfortable on any bike that I'd be able to just take it and you know, go have a good time. But certainly, you know, a lot of people now look at bikes and realise that, and I mean, bikes are inherently dangerous. You know what I mean? There's a little shout out as well to the Inherently Dangerous motovlogs. Good friend of mine, go give him a watch. But you know, they are inherently dangerous. There is obviously always a greater risk of riding your motorcycle than, you know, being in a car. And I don't know what it is. I just think that people are less comfortable with that risk now, and they don't like that. There is, I think, on motorcycles as well, there's a steeper learning curve in general. You know, and that's something that the E-clutch can actually help to alleviate a little bit, which, you know, whether I want it or not, it is going to be a standard offering, I think, on those bikes. It doesn't seem to add much to the price, and, you know, obviously I'm not Honda. I'm sure Honda have done much more market research than me, so I'm sure there is a large buyer's market, especially on the you know, the lower displacement bikes, the more learner friendly bikes. Now, personally, I don't think any of those 500s are, you know, purely learner bikes. I think someone could ride one forever if they wanted to. I say as I sit on a 1500 6-cylinder. But you know, you don't need something this big. You don't need something this heavy. You don't need something that this is this fond of drinking fuel. And I do think that, you know, if you're someone learning, setting out, and you get that E-clutch, and it's something that you just grow comfortable with, and you're riding in cities and whatever else, and more people are living in cities than ever before, I think it's a good thing. And obviously the more people that, it's so cold out of the sun. It's pretty cold this morning. There was frost on the cars when I was leaving. But yeah, I do think, you know, the more people that we get involved in motorcycles obviously is better. So good on Honda if they've done their market research and they've found that, hey, you know, more people want to ride this type of bike, and more people want to ride, you know, bikes with these options, then, you know, who are we to judge? I think that's obviously another good thing to see, and it's just good to see innovation. You know what I mean? It's always good to see innovation. Whether or not I want to buy it personally, it doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter if you want to buy it personally. It should just matter to you if you are also you know, someone who likes to ride bikes, that it may bring more people to riding bikes. Because I do think the more people that are on bikes on the road, I think the happier the general population would be. I've said this before, but also it's just the longer, or the more longevity I think motorcycles in general will have. Because let's face it, there's a lot of people out there who I'm sure would love to ban bikes. So that's kind of the more sensible stuff that I've seen. EICMA is the new CBF. That would be a great bike for me. It's just a pity it's not coming to America. And obviously then the KLE 500, I think that's going to be really cool. As an adventure bike, I think it does have its drawbacks. I saw Big Rock Moto already released a video on that. I did not get to watch the whole thing, but I think the points he touched on very early on in the video are very fair ones, you know, around the ride height and the ground clearance being somewhat compromised by the fact that Kawasaki just decided to use an engine that they have in their lineup rather than developing something specific for adventure biking. But I think, again, that's a good thing because it's keeping the price down. I don't remember off the top of my head the price, but it's very reasonable for a brand new bike with a warranty. And, you know, that's something, as someone who makes a lot of old, you know, repair videos and whatnot, especially on older motorcycles. That's my favorite thing to do, is the older motorcycle repair videos. You know, I get a lot of messages with people who you know, tell me that they don't think they would ever be able to emulate what I do. Now, personally, I think anyone can emulate what I do, because it's genuinely not that difficult. It really isn't. It's practice for sure. It's time, and it's a lot of patience sometimes, and you're going to have to redo tasks. It doesn't matter how many times you've done it. You know, look at the Valkyrie. I've taken it apart and put it back together, I think 3 times at this point. To make sure that everything is right and as it should be, because especially with older bikes, as you restore them, you kind of find it's like an iterative process, you know what I mean? You get your version 1 and you find a heap of small little issues. You get all the big issues fixed, obviously, before it goes on the road the first time, but then you find all your small little issues, and then you put it back together, and then you find your even smaller issues, and you just kind of chase them and you know, clean them up as you go. And that's just old bikes, you know what I mean? That's old bikes, that's old cars. They're never really fully finished. That's just how it is. Whereas, you know, if someone wants to get into motorcycles and wants something that they can just walk out to the garage, you know, turn the key and start it up every single day reliably for the next 5+ years without having to do anything except basic maintenance, that is that KLE 500. You know, that is those offerings from Honda, but the 500s with the E-clutch and the CBF. You know, they're modern bikes are. They just keep getting better and more reliable, which, I mean, again, personally, I think is a great thing. I know a little bit of spicy excitement sometimes is nice. I say as I sit on one of the most reliable bikes ever built. You know, but my Gixxer 750 always had some form of small issue, especially once I started using it on the track. You know, most older bikes, even 10+ years old, which personally I don't think 10+ years old is very old. For me, it's like it needs to be like 20 years to be considered old by me in the bike world, especially at the advent of what I would call modern bikes, like fuel injection and whatnot. You know, most bikes in the early 2000s had fuel injection. I do think anything with fuel injection just becomes a different beast. I'm not going to say better, I'm not going to say worse, but definitely easier. You know, kind of overall maintenance. I do apologize about the sun being directly in our faces, by the way, but you know, when I'm riding home today, it's gonna be probably dusk, so I don't know, will I bother recording then? We'll see. And then, yeah, onto the kind of the bigger things that, you know, really caught my eye is CFMOTO's new 1000 adventure bike. It looks like an absolute weapon. Obviously, you know, CFMOTO's partnership with KTM, who own Husqvarna and whatnot, it's very likely that borrows heavily from some of their bikes. Maybe like the Norden, maybe like the older 1090 Adventure, because I don't think it's going to be like the 1290 Adventure. Obviously different engine. It'll be very interesting to see how that one works out. That's a bike, if I had any desire of changing the V-Strom, I'd probably get that CFMOTO, to be honest. It has every bell and whistle pretty much that you could want on a motorcycle straight from the factory. I think that's going to be like a really good touring motorcycle. Like, obviously a lot of these bigger adventure bikes, I personally think, you know, too heavy for off-road, which is why I've spoken about it recently. I'd like to go get a DR650 at some point, so that I can do more off-roading. Not that the V-Strom isn't capable or anything, and not that the CFMOTO won't be capable. It's just that much weight, you're just increasing, you know, your risk from a fall or whatever, if the bike lands on you, or even picking it up. It's just, you know, and the more weight it has, the more it's likely to damage itself if you fall over at any form of speed. So yeah, I'm not sure would I call it like an adventure bike, but definitely like a touring bike in an adventure style, which is what I consider the V-Strom, to be honestly. But overall, I think it looks like an incredible package for what is likely to be not a terrible price. That's another one I'll probably cover when I can get all the tech specs and pricing and everything else, because I am very interested in that, and I'd like to do like a little comparison video with the V-Strom. Obviously, they're 10 years apart, and really how much the industry has moved on for a particular price point would be very interesting. You know, do like a cost when new, features when new, stuff like that. And then, you know, obviously the V-Strom 1000 being absolutely bulletproof, known for its reliability, and then obviously the CFMOTO, which will be an unproven beast, and which one I would, recommend people take a punt on, because, and that's something else I will be talking about soon, hopefully, is the fact that the likes of the V-Strom, right now you can get a 2014, 2015 V-Strom for incredibly reasonable money. Like, you're talking lower mileage than I bought my one at, and I've seen them sell on Facebook, and I have screenshots for like $5,000, which, and that's private sale, so that's $5,000 and you're out the door. That's a really, really good deal for what is a lot of bike. And I mean, I've seen multiples of those sell down in this area, where honestly bikes seem to be in just perfect condition, because we don't really get rain here per se, like bad rain. And nothing rusts where I'm at in North Carolina, which is honestly amazing. I love it. But I digress. And then the last bike I want to speak about, which honestly may end up being the first new bike I ever buy. I'm going to see, maybe I'll sell this, maybe I'll sell the Z900RS to try put money together for it. But the CFMOTO V4. I think it looks great. I think the winglets on it are huge. I'm not a massive fan of winglets, just because I think, road riding, it's always likely someone's going to bump off them, and I imagine they're going to be expensive to fix. And then on the track, if you have one minor mishap, your winglets are gone. Now, how much that would lead to like a functional decline on the bike? Probably not that much, especially at the speeds I'm going to be able to ride it at, both on road and on track. Oh, look at all the birds! So many birds. I'm not fast enough, I think, to require winglets. And I won't get into the physics of it, but there's plenty of videos out there. But basically, you need to be quite fast in general to actually get any benefit from winglets, which is why they were pioneered in MotoGP. But yeah, that V4, there's no price yet for it. There's not really a full tech spec list. I will definitely do a video on that when that's all released on CFMOTO's website. I did have a peek. They posted a YouTube video, a little reveal video, and I saw it at EICMA. But I did go to their website through their link, and I don't see any kind of advertising page for it there yet. But yeah, definitely when I can gather all the information I would personally want to gather, I'll be doing a video on that, because I think that is a very, very cool bike, and as an affordable, well, hopefully a more affordable foray into V4 ownership, I don't think they even have to price that far below, like the likes of the Aprilia and whatnot to get my attention. Obviously the Tuono V4, I would love a Tuono V4 factory, but like you're talking $20,000 once you get it out of the door of a dealership minimum, and I just don't have that type of money to spend on bikes. The rebuild on this bike was done over 2 years, and I think overall, even with the parts bike, we're probably about 5,000. I think over 2 years, and that's enough. You know what I mean? That is more than enough to be spending for me over 2 years. And I know there's a lot of people who probably say, "Oh, but smell of brakes off something." I know there's a lot of people who probably say, "Oh, but that's actually a fine price to spend over, like you could spend that on the CFMOTO." I'm not really a big fan of finance. I've done videos on this, but I'm not a huge fan of finance, especially not on motorcycles, just because again of the nature of motorcycles. That's just me. So I would rather be in a position where I could buy it outright, which the likes of selling some bikes would maybe let me do, or get much closer to do. And if I was going to do finance, I'd rather go in and pay most of the thing off, and then quickly pay off the rest. That would be my personal preferred track to take there. Not sure why everyone here was moving so slowly. I don't have any interest in staying behind you folks. But yeah, that's kind of my little chat. I think I'm very excited to see the more affordable bikes being announced. I think it's something that, for quite a long time the market's been crying out for. Would I have bought the likes of the KLE 500? Probably. You know, not that I didn't want the KLR 650, but I think the KLE 500 would have been more up my alley. I did, you know, I got to sit on and to give a little test ride to a KLR, and it was just really heavy, and that's why, you know, for the weight and everything else, I ended up going for the V-Strom 1000. But KLE 500 definitely would interest me. Obviously, that Honda CBF, if it was coming to America, would interest me, but it's not. As of right now, it's not coming to America, and the original CBF didn't come to America. And honestly, I'm really not sure why. I'm not sure what Honda, you know, are they concerned it would come in and compete with one of their other offerings too much, like maybe the Goldwing or something? Goldwings have to be the bread and butter over here, right? They're quite an expensive bike to buy, and they're a very popular bike. So if that is the reason, I do understand, you know, that if you have great sales on a pretty expensive bike, then obviously just stick with that. But yeah, let me know what I'll probably do like a rundown of all my favorite bikes at some point, you know, just sitting in the garage. But let me know what you think. You know, have you been following along with the releases at EICMA? Are there any bikes that particularly caught your eye? And if yes, what were they? And yeah, what do you think of Honda's new e-clutch system? If you want to hear more about that, let me know. I can obviously make a video explaining it. But it's a cool system. Just again, it's not something that I personally have ever seen the need for. I don't really need an assisted clutch. A quick shifter is nice to have, but I prefer having just a fully functional clutch. Now, is there much of a difference? Maybe not, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the CFMOTO bikes. Personally, like I said, very excited about both of them. I think they both look like they could be great. You absolutely flew up behind me, and now you don't want to overtake me. Absolute clown behavior. Oh, it's because you can't see in the sun. Oh, and you're a student driver. Cool. That's good. That's good. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on the matter right now. Obviously, more stuff to come. Let me know, is there any bike you'd like me to cover in particular? And that's it. I'm not even halfway to work, so yeah, I'll just keep on rolling now, and I'll talk to you all maybe later. Make another little short video on the way home, show you the dusk conditions I get to ride in now. And even in cold weather, I will say this Valkyrie, the wind protection it offers is fantabulous. It is. It's made for roads like this, and let me tell you, it excels. That's it. If you watched, thank you very much for watching. Please do let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments, and until next time, thanks again to all of my patrons. I do appreciate your support, and welcome to my new patron. Much appreciated. I'm glad some people still find this channel worth supporting in that sense. I think you're all crazy. I've said that many times, but I do appreciate it. Okay, that's it. Goodbye. Outro crew. If you could, if you were in my position, would you sell this bike and the Z to buy that CFMOTO V4? Obviously, you don't all love V4s as much as I do. I think V4 is the best engine configuration personally, especially for a motorcycle. But yeah, let me know, Outro crew, what would you do if you were in my position? Bye, Outro crew.